It is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Sunday in December. The Baltimore Ravens are alive. A dominant 24-0 shutout win over the Cincinnati Bengals to keep their playoff hopes alive. We're going to break this down from every angle. Talk, of course, about the defense that kept Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in check. We'll talk about how Lamar Jackson may have taken some strides in this game, look closer to his old self, and we'll talk about a couple injuries. One of them could be devastating for this Ravens defense. All that and much, much more. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, we are going to break down this win. First off, whoever is watching on Facebook, YouTube, or X, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a thumbs up anywhere that you are watching. You can see Jonas wearing his hat. You can see him wearing his big coat. I'm sure, Jonas, the trek to the stadium today in Cincinnati was not the most pleasant. Probably felt similar to how I felt for 4 years going to school at Syracuse University.
Brag. No, it wasn't that bad, actually. I think the walk in Minnesota was probably colder. Like, they're talking to players and support staffers after the game. It wasn't really that bad. Like, it was cold, yes, but the wind chill was below freezing, but it wasn't a whole lot of wind. Like, talking to Tom Valente, the Ravens, one of the Ravens PR officials after the game, he said it really didn't get that bad on the sideline until the Ravens were out of the sun and back in the shadows. I think in the third quarter or fourth quarter. So I think all things considered, like, yeah, the headline is coldest Ravens game ever, but it really was not all that frigid, all things considered.
Yeah, and we know that Lamar Jackson, there is a reputation of how he will perform in cold weather games, whether he deserves that reputation or not. We've talked about ad nauseum, talked about a lot of it with their game up in Buffalo. He played pretty darn well today, but he is not the headline. The headline is the defense. The Ravens defense absolutely dominated the Bengals today. Pulled off their first shutout since 2018 and kept Joe Burrow to 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions as the Ravens improved to 7-7 on the season. They snapped their 2-game win streak, and they eliminate the Bengals from playoff competition. Jonas, this was not the performance I was expecting to see from the Ravens defense that gave up 32 points to this same Bengals team at home a little more than 2 weeks ago on Thanksgiving. Sure, Jamar Chase got his in this game, 10 catches for over 130 yards. But other than that, Burrow could not get much going at all on offense, and the Cincinnati Bengals looked absolutely helpless as a unit.
Yeah, you look at some of the advanced stats. Joe Burrow minus 0.35 EPA per play. That is terrible. That is influenced certainly by the pick six or whatever we're calling the Kyle Van Noy interception to lateral /
still a pick six. Yeah,
Louis Gilman.
Maybe pick 3 and pick 3. They each get credit for that.
There you go. It was, a game that I think we're going to talk about started in practice. Like, everyone that we asked about, everyone that mentioned it, some of them unprompted, talking about how, like, the Ravens really came into this practice week with a pretty, bad taste in their mouth from that game against Pittsburgh. Marlon Humphrey kind of mentioning that they played with such intensity on Friday, which is, typically typically a practice day that you would expect a little bit more pullback from. It's a little bit more of the, kind of relaxation day as you get ready for Sunday. Thank you. That he was sore on Saturday, which is not really a typical experience during a normal game week. So I think, we've heard tell of the Ravens being locked in, and Roquan last week was the guy asking the defensive teammates, if you could choose your destiny, what would you be willing to sacrifice? And of course, it ended up with the Ravens losing a pretty embarrassing game to the Steelers. But this week, as John Harbaugh said, the Ravens got complimentary football. He felt like this was the Ravens' best game of the season, and it started in practice with just a level of focus and a level of buy-in, and a level of commitment and teamwork that maybe had been lacking in weeks past or in games past. So the Ravens delivered and stepped up. Like you said, this wasn't necessarily a must-win game, because it wasn't like if the Ravens lose this, their season is over. But they absolutely had to have this game to put pressure on the Steelers on Monday night.
Yeah, if the Ravens lost this game, according to your favorite metric, the New York Times playoff picture, their percentage chance of winning the AFC North would go down to 14%. And then if the Dolphins lost to the Steelers on Monday Night Football, that percentage chance would go down to 11%. So this was, in so many ways, a must-win. Jonas, you described this kind of as an FU effort from this Ravens defense. There was a video before the game of Kyle Hamilton firing up his teammates, talking about how they could end the Bengals season with a win, and that's exactly what they did. And then they came out and played just hard-hitting football. And I know hits feel worse. Hits definitely deliver more thump when it is a cold game. And Draymond Jones said after the game, too, he could tell from the start of this game, as he put it, the Bengals were not ready to play because they were not ready for the cold. The Ravens defense was flying around. They were hitting hard. They were talking trash. If you squinted, you could see the remnants of the old Ravens defense. I'm not going to necessarily harken back to the Ed Reed, Ray Lewis days, but certainly in my experience covering this team, felt a little bit like the 2023 Ravens defense, the last year of the Mike McDonald defense. The stats were not crazy. I mean, they gave up almost 300 yards, and the Ravens themselves put up 317 yards. They had just 3 sacks, whereas Lamar Jackson was sacked 4 times. 71 plays the Cincinnati Bengals ran to the Ravens 40, but the big differences were the 2 interceptions that the Ravens had on defense. They forced the Bengals to go 3 for 15 on third down, which we talked about before this game was going to be a key to them winning, and 0 for 1 in the red zone. And as we know, that red zone trip was the ill-fated ended with the ill-fated Joe Burrow throw that ended in that pick 6. So they bowed up when it mattered. They weren't perfect. Jamar Chase still was just slicing and dicing, but when it came to crucial plays, the Ravens defense, I thought, played phenomenally.
This is a really weird stat, Paul. You mentioned that the 40 offensive plays that matched a franchise low. Do you want to know, or do you want to take a guess at what game that matched? And like,
I would say maybe the Chiefs playoff game.
It was a game this year. It was the 44-10 loss to the Houston Texans. So
That's
you
right.
have a Ravens blowout and another Ravens blowout. One of them, the Ravens are in the win column. The one, they're in the loss column. And I don't really know, I know the story of this game is the Ravens defense, and we should make space for them at the top of this show. But it's kind of hard to square with what we saw from the Ravens offense, because they were explosive. I mean, you look at that 7.9 yards per play offhand, probably like maybe only that game against Buffalo were they as explosive in terms of just the yards per play stat. But obviously only one of those, they only have the 2 touchdowns. They probably should have had the third with Zay Flowers, but he goes full, fully outstretched. It goes off his hands. Probably should have brought it in, couldn't bring it in, whatever. So I don't know if you're if you're Todd Monken, like if you're in your grade in this offense, what exactly the final mark is for this team, because they still had they had just a few more points than they did on offense than they did in that week 13 game on Thanksgiving night against the Bengals. But whatever, I think
just 3 more points.
The important thing is, and I think it jibes with what Roger Rosengarten told me post game. Like, there was a mentality switch, that there was a knowledge that if we did what we did in the second half against Pittsburgh, where they really ran it down the Steelers' throat, then they could kind of put the Bengals away. Like I think Roger said, basically what we wanted to do was dare the Bengals safeties to try to tackle Derrick Henry in the open field. And to their credit, they did an okay job of not letting Derrick Henry go for that home run hit. Like the longest run that he had of the day today was only 29 yards. But I think he had at least, he had 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 runs beyond 15 yards, if not 20 yards. And I think certainly you started to see this Ravens rushing attack start to wear and start to lean on this Bengals run defense, which, just like the passing defense, has been pretty damn bad all year long. So is this a get right game for the Ravens offense? Probably not. Only 317 yards. Some of that was situational. Some of it is just kind of how the game played out. But they did what they had to. And, with it really just comes down to what this team can do to stay with at least, a game of the Steelers going into that Week 18 game. Because if they are, then that sets up a win and you're in type scenario for this team.
Yeah, I remember we had Childs Walker on the podcast a few weeks ago, back when the Ravens were in the middle of their 5-game win streak. And he posed the question, is it more likely, because at that point, the Ravens offense was still struggling. Lamar looked hobbled, and he still doesn't look 100%, but he took some strides today. And the defense was playing phenomenally against some terrible quarterback play. And he posed the question, is it more likely that the Ravens defense will regress and the offense never gets to a sustainable point and they're left without an obvious strength? Or is it possible that the Ravens defense is just that good and they just flipped a switch once they got Alohi Gilman in there and Draymond Jones in there, and that they were going to be able to carry this team? I still don't know if we know the answer. I'm just not going to wait on this Ravens offense to look like its old self. I mean, it's the offensive line is still a huge question mark. Lamar Jackson obviously still doesn't look like an MVP caliber player at this point, and they're just not getting enough from the rest of their guys to the point where you feel great about this offense being one of the better units if this team is in the playoffs. But if the defense can be that good, they haven't looked like that in a few weeks. But if the defense can really step up, we see the ceiling for this defense. I think a large part of it was Tavius Robinson coming back. First time he'd played in over a month, and he had a sack and 2 quarterback hits in this game. It felt like they got a little bit more pressure on Joe Burrow than they had been getting on the previous, in the last couple games, and certainly in that game on Thanksgiving. But yeah, the offense, it still doesn't feel like a perfect unit. Derrick Henry had 100 yards on just 11 carries, and some of those came from those explosive runs. He had just 6 carries for 17 yards in the first half. Keaton Mitchell had 8 carries for 66 yards. Maybe you should give the ball perhaps more to Derrick Henry, but again, it's who can say in the moment if it's play calling or what it is. But this team is going to be able to is going to need to run the ball effectively if they're going to be able to put up points.
Yeah, I went and checked, I think, either at halftime or early in the third quarter. I believe Derrick Henry had just 1 carry in the second quarter. And some of that, again, was circumstance, conditions, whatever. Obviously, one of those drives ends with Zay Flowers bobbling the pass right into the hands of a Bengals defender. They, you look at the EPA numbers, they were 0.2 EPA per play, even with that terrible interception. That, again, was not Lamar's fault. Although he probably got a little bit lucky, or he definitely got a little bit lucky with the Mark Andrews basically forcing the Bengals to drop an interception. What was that? Also in the second quarter. Yep. So,
that was on that 2-minute drive.
You lose some, right? That ends with a Zay touchdown. Yeah.
What a wild game for Zay Flowers, by the way.
Never we're so cooked, we're so back. Just truly the the highs and lows of life, the extremities of the human condition on full display with that one. I don't think we got a chance, or at least I didn't get a chance to talk to Zay after this one, so I'm not really sure how he's feeling about this one. But for a guy who has not scored a whole lot of touchdowns, haven't really gotten a chance to see just how deep his bag of celebrations is, probably felt pretty good for him to score the way that he did. And listen, this season is probably going to be defined by how the Ravens execute in situational, in high leverage spots like that 2-minute drill. We saw just how poor they were able to pull things together at the end of that game against Pittsburgh, just not really able to do what they had to get in anywhere close enough to be able to attempt even a Hail Mary in that loss last week. So for them to get the ball, I think with 65 seconds left, thereabouts, they had the 3 timeouts, but to march, I think it was the full 80 yards because I believe it was a touchback right before they took over possession, and to score with ample time to spare. I think you credit Todd Monken, you credit Lamar Jackson, you credit John Harbaugh, you give a lot of credit to this offensive line, which despite the 4 sacks, I think a lot of them were just Lamar trying to make stuff happen downfield. Wide receivers not getting open, obviously not having Rashad Bateman was definitely an issue. It was pretty much the Zay Flowers show for the receivers today. But again, they far outplayed this Bengals offense, which I think we all probably would have given the edge to in terms of which unit do you trust the most going to this one. And that's was a big reason why I picked the Ravens to lose this one.
You have little faith. What is your pick record up to so far this season, Jonas? Are you under 500?
I think I'm 2 games under 500.
Oof. I did predict a Ravens win, by the way, but I had it as a much closer margin of victory. I think I said 24-21 or something like that. Zay Flowers in this game finishes with 3 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown. However, he cost the Ravens a possession. Ball goes right through his hands and into the hands of a defender for that Lamar Jackson interception. And you could say he maybe cost the Ravens a touchdown, too, with the ball that he's not able to corral in the back of the end zone when he's wide open. But 2 phenomenal catches during that 2-minute drill that set up the Ravens with that score right before the half. You saw the downfield completion where Lamar puts it in an incredibly tight window. Zay stops and comes back for the football and picks up 26 yards on the play. And then the touchdown down the left sideline from Lamar Jackson to Zay Flowers. Was that the best thrown ball we've seen from Lamar all season?
It's hard to imagine a better one. I think the good thing, just talking macro in general, was yes, there were plays where Lamar probably held the ball on a little bit too long, but I think some of the confidence from Lamar was manifested in the fact that he was standing in there to take hits, but knowing that if he got rid of the ball, something good was going to happen. I think you think of that Lamar crosser, I believe, on that 2-minute drill touchdown right before the end of the half. I think he got hit on that play, but he knew that that Mark Andrews was, had the DB's head turned. He knew that if he put the ball up high enough and accurate enough, 89 was going to come down with it, and he did. So I think there are just small signs of Lamar getting right. Again, this is still a historically bad Bengals defense. DVOA numbers are absolutely terrible. The Patriots next week are not world beaters, but they're definitely a step or 2 up from what this Bengals defense has been all year. Same thing with the Packers the week after that. They are not world beaters, but they're probably even a step or 2 up from the Patriots, considering the state of their run defense, and obviously the way that they choked today against the Bills should not fill anyone with a huge amount of confidence in New England in terms of having a championship caliber defense. But still, the Ravens, I think, are guilty of just playing to these defenses' levels, whether it's a terrible defense or a mediocre defense or even a good defense. So you just take small victories for what this offense is able to do, and maybe you get Rashad Bateman back. Maybe you just trust in the kind of strength and conditioning of this Ravens run game and this Ravens offensive line being able to just be the more physical team, be the stronger team, be the longer lasting team, and you just have the Derrick Henry effect kind of playing out. Like, I was a little skeptical that we would see it play out the way that it did so spectacularly today, but maybe there is more meat on that bone because it's Derrick Henry, because it is these cold sub-freezing temperatures, and just you have DBs and linebackers who just don't want to hit Derrick Henry. You don't want to meet Daniel Faalele at that second level, or Ronnie Stanley at that second level. And I think also just a big credit to Todd Monken to just kind of taking advantage of, you have defenses that have that maybe fear factor, and so they're flying downhill, and you have counters that were able to get Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell to the second level, that were kind of playing on that general insecurity about, can we really tackle this guy in the open field? So we want to meet him at we want to meet him at the last scrimmage. But if you can't actually meet him at the last scrimmage, then you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah, it is December. This is when Derrick Henry plays his best football. As the weather gets colder, Derrick Henry heats up. We've said that for a long time, and he gets better over the course of games as well. And you saw finally he was able to break through with those 2 big runs in the third quarter for the Ravens. It's funny how we just hear it from Todd Monken and we hear it from John Harbaugh every week, where they talk about the run-pass balance, and somebody brings up Derrick Henry's diminished carry load this season, and they both say, we want to get him the ball more. We're not happy with those numbers. And then he gets just 11 carries in this game. So it's just funny that they're still not able to get the right balance that they're looking for. But you also see at times there are moments where you see flashes of how good this offense can still be. The fact that they got DeAndre Hopkins involved on a little RPO in the first half, first time in a long time. Maybe this season that we've seen DeAndre Hopkins that open and able to get that many yards on a play. And yet he still
should have had more, except he tries to be Zay Flowers and tries to cut back when there was no cutback lane, and probably forfeited a good 5 or 10 yards. Obviously he probably wasn't going to run away from anyone on that, but that was just totally bizarre in the moment, and it was even more bizarre watching it on replay.
Hey, we're taking the victory here because he actually got the football, and he actually played, I think he played more than 16 snaps or whatever he played last week. How about the screen pass to Rasheen Ali, 30 yards for a touchdown, totally untouched? Kind of reminded me of the Jaylen Warren screen pass against the Ravens last week in Baltimore that the Steelers pulled off. Was that did you get any kind of clarity after the game? Because it looked like Lamar was celebrating with Tyler Linderbaum. They were talking about maybe the Ravens checked into that because they saw the rush coming. Did you get any kind of idea as to how that play came together?
Yeah, I don't know what the initial play call was, but Lamar said and John Harbaugh said that was they basically checked into that play call. Obviously it was a pretty simple, but in this case clever play design where Rasheen Ali bluffs as if he's going to be taking on that blitzing edge defender or blitzing second level linebacker, and he goes out into the open field, and Lamar floats the ball over that wave of pressure, and there's no one to get to Rasheen Ali. I think the next gen stats data had him at like over 20 miles per hour. So that is a testament to just how wide ass open he was, that the fact that he was able to get that fast with the ball in his hands. And I believe that was his first career touchdown, right? Not just as a receiver, but as a ball player in the NFL.
I think so. It certainly was a nice moment for him. Still, the flowers in this game, to me, pun intended, do have to go to pun not intended, to this defense in this game. I mean, I don't know how much more we can say about how well they played, with the huge caveat that they may be without one of their starters for a while. Teddy Buchanan suffering what our own Gianna Hahn reported, that the Ravens' fear is a torn ACL. He went down in the first quarter with a non-contact injury, got to the sideline, and then was eventually carted to the locker room. Jonas, you saw him in the locker room after this game. Awful if this is the last time we see the rookie linebacker this season. And it creates questions about this Ravens defense, not just in the short term, but going into 2026 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you feel good about Trent Simpson stepping up. He finished this game with how many tackles? He had 7 tackles in 2+ quarters of full-time action. So you know, I think he has been probably better than people would have expected or people have given him credit for, because I know Trent Simpson took over that starting job in week 2, but it wasn't because, at least to my knowledge, it wasn't because Trent Simpson was really just totally biffing it on the field. Like, I think he's been playing well. They've obviously found creative ways to use him situationally, just as a edge rusher, as a blitzer when they didn't feel like they had enough juice off the edge. And obviously, if he's going to be a full-time off-ball linebacker, then they probably can't do as much stuff with him there. But with our Darius Washington coming back, it was interesting to hear guys. I think it was Marlon gave him a lot of credit. Like, he was flying around in practice, giving a lot of juice to this defense, which you expect from AD. He's a guy who's not big in stature, but who definitely brings, who talks with his pads and is able to kind of put his nose in there and just be a nuisance to the offense. And he didn't get a whole lot of snaps today, but I do think you kind of, with Keon Martin being inactive, you did see him being able to step up in some of those 3 safety looks, or maybe even 4 safety looks, depending on who was on and who was off the field. You trust him to be a guy with in dime personnel, but it's still just a huge bummer for Teddy, because happening this late in the season, December 14th, even if it is like a 9-month recovery from that ACL, that probably means that your best hope for him is missing all of the preseason, maybe being back for week 1. And even then, are you getting anywhere close to a player who's not diminished physically? It's just a tough beat for him, because he came into this game second on the team in tackles and not that far behind Roquan, who obviously missed a couple to help Teddy catch up to him. But it's just there's so many linebackers who've suffered injuries on this team. Jay Higgins is on the IR. Chandler Martin, suffered that season-ending ACL injury. You're kind of down to Jake Hummel if knock on wood, Trent Simpson gets hurt or gets sick or something like that. I mean, it's just a tough beat for that position. Roquan is the ultimate kind of floor raiser because of just how smart he is and how well he plays over the middle and everything. But for Teddy to potentially lose at least, well, he's definitely going to be lost for the rest of this year if what John Harbaugh thinks actually comes true. He says it doesn't look good for Teddy, but to also lose season of development and however many games he might have to miss next year, it's a bummer. And you want that speed to be able to track down guys like Drake May next week and Jordan Love the week after. But Trenton is no athletic slouch himself. It just sucks that Teddy, for as good of a guy as he is and as impressive as a rookie as he's been, that this is probably it for him in year 1.
Yeah, you think back to Keaton Mitchell suffering that ACL tear almost 2 years ago to the day, December 18th, 2023. And he obviously missed the rest of that season. He missed the start of the 2024 season, and he just wasn't quite himself. He didn't have the same burst coming back from that ACL tear, and it took him over a full year to get back to himself. Now, obviously, running back, you need speed, you need lateral quickness a little bit more than you need top speed more than a linebacker would, but still, it is a gnarly injury to suffer this late in the season. It is a long recovery, and you just hope the best for Teddy Buchanan. Another injury to this Ravens defense as well. Cornerback Chidobe Awuzie left this game and was ruled out with a foot injury. Did John Harbaugh provide or shed any light as to the length of how long Chidobe Awuzie could be out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's never good when he was ruled out as quickly as he was with that foot injury. I didn't see it live, nor did I. I mean, you were watching the game at home. I don't really know what happened on that 4th down deep pass, but John Harbaugh said that something happened with Awuzie getting kind of tied up in the net there at the end, which might have led to something.
I heard, but I didn't see that happen on the broadcast.
Did you see him involved in the play?
Barely. I mean, that was one of those plays that it was downfield, kind of difficult to see exactly what was happening, and the broadcast did not linger particularly long on any of that.
Right. So I didn't see him post game don't really know what's happening there. They said that they would know more tomorrow. Obviously, it would really stink to lose him for. I think they could probably get away with not having him against the Patriots because it's Drake May is Drake May, but I don't think he is the MVP because of the strength of that receiving core. I mean, like Stephon Diggs is obviously has proved a lot of people wrong, but I think the big circle the calendar kind of game over these next 3 games is that Packers game because you just have like the depth of that team just gets better and better every week with the guys coming back. Like not a lot of Pro Bowl level players on that team, but just a lot of like B to B plus level wide receivers on that group. And you want to have Cheeto for as many snaps as possible because he's been probably the Ravens' most consistent wide receiver today. I mean, you look at what Jamar Chase was able to do despite this 24-0 shutout, 10 catches, 16 targets, 132 yards. We recorded, I forget if we mentioned this in the podcast, Paul, but Jamar Chase, I think with like the sample size being at least 8 games, has the most receiving yards per game in NFL history against the Ravens. No receiver in NFL history has more receiving yards per game against any opponent than Jamar Chase against the Ravens. And that average went up today with 132 yards. So the Ravens are definitely they probably had their fill of Jamar Chase. They he beat Marlon Humphrey a couple times. He beat Nate Wiggins a couple times. He got open over the middle. Just an absolute beast and someone that is not going away anytime soon with that long-term deal. But again, the Ravens got to Joe Burrow enough times that I asked John Harbaugh, like, did he feel like the pressure and the hits and just the kind of wear and tear they were able to exact on him? Because I think they finished with 10 quarterback hits. Draymond Jones had 1, Tavius Robinson had 2, Travis Jones, Mike Green, Kyle Van Noy all had a hit themselves. John Harbaugh felt like that had a kind of cumulative effect that paid off with Tavius Robinson coming up the middle, getting in Joe Burrow's face. Kyle Van Noy drops on one of those classic, simulated pressures or creepers, or maybe it was a 5-man blitz. I'm not sure, but Kyle Van Noy's there just chilling, and Joe Burrow just throws it right to him. And that's all she wrote basically on that one.
Yeah, Jamar Chase 10 catches for 132 yards is just ridiculous. The Ravens had the benefit of not having to face T. Higgins in this game, who is back in the concussion protocol, because the next leading wide receiver for Cincinnati was running back Chase Brown with 7 catches for 37 yards. So it was a massive drop off from Jamar Chase and the rest of the field. But of course, the Ravens were without their number 2 wide receiver in Rashad Bateman as well. Marlon Humphrey late in this game went down, but it seemed like he was okay as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to him post-game, and he seemed fine. So, he came back in just a couple plays after going into the blue tent. He wasn't even on the sideline long enough for the Ravens to give us any kind of indication about what he was dealing with. So, I think we might have announced that it was a knee injury. I forget. There's so many injuries.
He was at one point listed as questionable
with a knee, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So it might have just been a contusion or a slight tweak or something. But he didn't seem to be in a whole lot of agony, and he came out in a relatively quick amount of time post game that would lead you to believe that he didn't require a whole lot of maintenance on that knee or whatever was bothering him. So that's a good sign because even having our Darius Washington back, you want some real dudes on the outside. And I know it hasn't been a great year for him for Marlon, and he probably was lucky not to be called for pass interference on that pass to the end zone, I think to Mitchell Tinsley, that ended up with a drop or an incompletion. But you just like having a safe pair of hands in Marlon Humphrey, and just a guy who's a communicator and a leader off the field.
Yeah, and you talk about all the injuries at linebacker that the Ravens have suffered. I mean, talk about cornerback going back to training camp. I mean, they lose 2 draft picks at cornerback, and Robert Longerbeam and Bilal Kone. They've lost Marlon Humphrey at times this season. So, and if they're losing Chidobe Awuzie for any stretch of time, that's going to wear on their depth as well. We know EDC calls that position a greyhound position, but they certainly need as many of those horses or greyhounds, I suppose, as healthy as possible. All right, on the other side of another quick break, we are going to look at the Ravens' playoff odds as they get back to 500.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, Ravens have 3 games remaining. Home against the New England Patriots at 8:20 on Sunday, December 21st. At Green Bay on Saturday, December 27th at 8 o'clock. So 2 games, 2 of the remaining 3 games were flexed to nighttime because the NFL just is intent on making sure that neither Jonas nor I sleep. And then Week 18 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which has yet to be scheduled. They are 7.
But that could also be in prime time.
Very well could be in prime time. Ravens are 7-7. They're going to obviously await the results of the Monday Night Football game between the Dolphins and Steelers. But at this point, do you have the percentage chance in front of you that the Ravens make the playoffs?
Yeah, it's back above 40%, about 40 to 41%, according to the New York Times. And again, that'll change.
Draymond Jones percentage.
Yeah, that'll change based on what the Ravens did input wise today. So that could go up even further if the Steelers lose to the Dolphins. It could go up to 50%. It could also come down to 34%, or would come down to 34% if the Steelers win in Miami. Again, it is just as simple as, are the Ravens within a game of the Steelers by Week 18? Because the Ravens could be up a game, and if the Steelers win that final Week 18 game in Pittsburgh, then they would obviously have the head-to-head tiebreaker by virtue of that in-season sweep. The Ravens could be even with the Steelers, and of course that would make Week 18 decisive. The Ravens could be down a game of the Steelers, and if they pull even, then I believe they would have that tiebreaker, because I think regardless of what happens over these next couple of weeks, they would have the common games tiebreaker, because the next couple games for the Ravens are the next couple game for the Steelers are the Dolphins and the Lions. And I think just because the Ravens have a better performance, because they beat the Bears and the Steelers lost them, I think then they would have the advantage in the common games tiebreaker.
Where's Gianna Hahn? Let's get Gianna on this. She's been studying this.
But it's just a lot of balls in the air. We'll know more about the precise calculations of everything Sunday night, because after Monday night, because again, the Dolphins are another common opponent in all this. So we'll see. But the Ravens did what they had to. Getting a division win in this was very, very critical. Like if you ask if the Ravens had to take one game over these next 2 games, Patriots or Bengals getting this win because of the importance of the divisional tiebreaker, I think was very, very important. So good job for the Ravens. But again, I think if you talk about these next 2 games, you need probably at least one win, because even if the Steelers lose to the Lions, we're still not. I don't think you can pencil them in for a loss to the Browns coming up. And like I said, the Ravens just need to be able to keep within touching distance of the Steelers coming up.
Yeah, both these teams, the Steelers and the Ravens, are technically in control of their own destiny. If either of these teams wins out, they win the AFC North title and they take the division. Yeah, you really can't count on the Dolphins beating the Steelers on Monday. You can't count on the Browns beating the Steelers in a few weeks either. So going to be interesting to see what happens over these final 7 games total for these two teams. Jonas, where can everybody find your great work? At Jonas_Shaffer, at All Banner Sports. What are you writing about today?
Just the kind of, like you said, the FU mentality that the Ravens played with. Didn't really get anything that colorful post game in terms of profanities, but I think based off
you were
the
trying to coax
Wolfgang,
some curse words from some of these players, perhaps.
yeah, and from coaches as well. None of that came coming, but that there was obviously just a level of physicality and intensity that the Ravens had from before the game. When you see Kyle Hamilton telling these guys, if we beat them, their season's over, and they beat them, and the Bengals season is now indeed over. You have Traymon Jones kind of throwing down the gauntlet post game, saying like, "Hey, the Bengals were basically soft. They weren't ready for the cold." Roger Rosengarten saying like, if we knew that we knew that if we could get Derrick Henry into that second level, we liked our odds. It was just a pretty colorful game, pretty colorful post game quote wise, and then Gianna writing about obviously Teddy Buchanan, writing about the pass rush, finally able to break through a little bit, and then I think Kyle Goon writing about just where has this been all along, and I think the answer for that one is probably, well, you don't often get to play a team that's as discombobulated as the Bengals, but who knows what's going to happen these next 2 weeks? But certainly the level of test is going to be one that the Ravens haven't seen since, I don't know, before the bye, because they just haven't really seen a whole lot of teams that are as complete as New England is.
Yeah, I mean, you do get to play the Bengals twice, though, and the Ravens played them 2 weeks ago. So they do sometimes get to play teams as discombobulated as the Bengals, and they lost to this Bengals team 2 weeks ago.
And it wasn't close.
No, exactly. This game wasn't close either, but it went the Ravens' way, 24-0. Plenty more coverage, as Jonas outlined, on thebanner.com.
Shout out to the Banner.
Jonas and I will have another podcast for you coming up this Thursday as the Ravens prepare to face the New England Patriots. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano.